Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the 817 Podcast, your Monday morning news show covering local Fort Worth news, politics, culture. I'm Jimmy here with EJ, and we've got a big couple of weeks coming up. We've got an election on November 2nd that we're going to get into and go through the ballot on for our big story. But before we get to that, EJ, do you want to lead us in on a couple of small stories?
Yeah, so I know we have a couple of small stories. A little bit, if this is your first pod or if someone recommends this to you, just realize we go through the news every kind of week, look at the news from Star Telegram, the Fort Worth Report, KERA, you name it, Fort Worth Business Press, Fort Worth Magazine, and just kind of look at the different things that are going on out there and seeing what's hot, and then we take the top news and share it with you. So 2 to 3 small stories, and then 1 big story. This was a big week around childcare when you have the school bond coming up next month, and just also when you look at the federal government and Biden's plans are focusing on. And so what's really cool is that there's already a lot of innovative work around childcare, and if you have kids, you probably have plenty to talk about how hard it is, how you might have your family support, how you might spend a lot of money to put your kids in childcare. So trust me, I can't imagine how hard this is. So students at Crowley ISD can start attending school as young as 6 weeks old. And Fort Worth ISD is looking to pass the early childhood centers, which would be embedded into elementary schools. This is the idea. And what's really cool about it is Crowley is able to allow students these kids, their younger siblings go to the elementary school, and allows parents to have places where they could drop their kids off for childcare and still have kids in the elementary school and actually be able to work together. So the bond proposal A sets aside $13,798,232 for this project, which established 4 centers across the city in areas that need high quality early childhood education. The district is asking voters for more than $1.5 billion across 4 proposals, which we'll go through. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting around how that works. And this just seems like, one, kudos to Crowley to doing something really cool. And even just from a support public schools model, when you can get kids in early, it's like Mercedes-Benz or BMW trying to market to you when you're 6 so that you want one when you're older. I think the idea of, if you're at the school district already at 6 weeks old, why wouldn't you not be there at 6 years old?
Yeah, for sure. And childcare is obviously a tough thing. It's as competitive as going to college, as getting into college, basically. And right now, we're trying to figure out, businesses are saying we can't hire people. Why aren't people going back to work? And, Texas threw out the BS of we're going to end the federal unemployment benefit, and that's going to get people back to work. That obviously didn't happen. We all knew it was a ruse from the start. So now people are looking at, okay, people can't go back to work because of they don't have childcare for their kids. And the expense of childcare, if you can afford to stay at home, we hear all the time that, people don't work because it's not worth putting your entire paycheck into sending your kid to a daycare when you could stay home with them. But even further than that, you've got to book your kid's spot in school 6 months in advance, up to a year in advance. And if somebody whose kid is already in that childcare has another baby, they're going to get precedent over you. So all of a sudden you think you might be getting into a spot, you get bumped out. So I know of a business in Fort Worth that is trying to get their employees to come back into the office multiple days a week starting in November. For that to be a practical solution for people with kids means that they would have had to pay for daycare that they didn't need for the last few months of this new school year. or they have to figure out how to get into a daycare starting in January and have this like 2 months in between where you don't really know what to do. So it's just not a practical solution for getting people back to work, or for kids having to make this like weird, awkward transition for like a few weeks, then go on Christmas break, whatever. So getting this into schools and providing an affordable means of childcare for places in need of high quality early childhood education is huge. I love that Crowley's doing it, and I love that it's on the ballot for Fort Worth to try and follow suit in. And hopefully like it starts out with these 4 schools, things go really well, and they continue to add to it as we see that it benefits the community.
Yeah, and a couple kind of big points here is, like, according to the Economic Policy Institute, Texans pay $777 a month or $9,324 annually. According to the EPI, it's almost 8% higher than in-state tuition for college and accounts for over 15% of the median family's income in Texas. The average cost for tuition at a 4-year public university was $10,300.
Well, and that's crazy too, because like we talk about saving for college, like that's a cultural thing, and it's like, oh, you've got 18 years once you find out you're having a kid to save up and get ready for college. But really, you're having to walk into parenthood with enough money or enough disposable income to send your kid to college while also potentially losing your second income stream. So it's like, is that a feasible thing for a 25-year-old that's like 3 years into the workplace, 4 years into the workplace, to be able to step into that? Like, it's no wonder that we see birth rates declining and people waiting longer and longer to get married and have kids, because you're having to walk in with a robust savings account, or else you're kind of screwed. Yeah.
And then you have the college debt, like, right, if you did go to college and you've
potentially got medical debt from having a kid that's, going to cost you $10,000, even if you have good health insurance.
Yeah, and here what's crazy is in 2018, the United Way conducted a report over those who live above the poverty line but struggled to meet financial obligations when a crisis hit. They called it the Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Report, also called ALICE, which found that there's 184,210 households in Tarrant County who fall in this category. And what's crazy about it is that basically the senior vice president of which seems like a great person to have on the pod, of community investment at United Way Tarrant County said that the survival budget for a family of 4 in Tarrant County is about $64,500. The cost of housing, childcare, food, transportation, and medical needs can quickly make it challenging to keep a budget. Just to give you perspective there, that's over the median household income in Fort Worth. Like, that's
by a lot.
Yeah. So it's just like, these are, and that's why I think when you look at the universal health care, because universal health care benefits everyone. Kids who go to school early is more likely to graduate, less likely to be in SPED classes, more likely to go to college. So, with Biden hoping to invest $425 billion in establishing a universal preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds, I think this is something that modern other countries already kind of do, that we should get on board with.
Yeah, the amount that the U.S. invests in kids is insanely low compared to the rest of the modern world. And it's somewhere that, like, it needs to be considered infrastructure. It's part of building up the future of the country, is investing in kids. And so I think this is a big win for Fort Worth. We'll talk more about the bonds a little later. But this is something that could really help invest in the future of Fort Worth ISD.
All right, so now to the second story, short story. We have $19.7 million in federal funds going to 4 Fort Worth projects. And this is exciting because it hits a lot of points that I think we talk about on the pod. So the Fort Worth City Council voted Tuesday to allocate $19.7 million of the city's $173 million American Rescue Plan Act funding for 4 projects. The council allocated $3 million to contract with the CDFI, Friendly America LLC, to create Fort Worth branch that would establish community financial institutions throughout the city that are more responsive to the needs to their immediate neighborhood. This could involve in investing business startups, home loans, health clinics, or community centers. The council also allocated $4.2 million to cover the costs of selling the land needed to build Evans and Rosedale Urban Village project, which I think that's interesting how that works. That project will bring 292 apartments, units, 20 townhomes, and much needed grocery store in the area of the city with few community services. But here's the big one that I thought was really exciting because we just got off the talking to Health Science Center team who is leading on like Global Entrepreneurship Week and talking about the lack of entrepreneurial spirit in Fort Worth. There's $2.4 million that will go to fund an effort by the University of North Texas Health Science Center to bring the technology accelerator program TechStars to Fort Worth. The partnership hopes to create an incubator for innovative companies within the city. Now, finally, the biggest allocation is $10.1 million, which will help fund 2 projects promoting early childhood education and a series of affordable housing projects built by Fort Worth Area Habitat for Humanity. Childcare associates will get $2 million to renovate the Gwendolyn C. Gregg Child Development Center and another $5 million to build new early childhood learning centers in Stop 6. Those are kind of the main areas there. But what is your kind of overall take on that?
I think it's a lot of good things that we're trying to invest in. And obviously we've talked about where Fort Worth lags in incubation and startups. And so I love that UNT Health Science Center and that team is getting a portion of this to keep pressing forward on that. But overall, I mean, I think it's a lot of things that need investment and are a positive for the community.
Yeah, and kind of how TechStars works is, what happens is it's a 3 to 6 month. Accelerators are different. I'm not sure how this one's going to be set up, but what happens is they take 7% equity into your company and then give you funding, like a little bit startup cash. And then they work with you on product flow, pitching, and storytelling so that then by the end of it, you have a demo day where then people actually invest large sums into your company. And so, TechStars is one of the top 3 probably doing this from a brand. So I think that's cool. But what I think would be really exciting is, I'm going to do my part in trying to figure out who to find to apply for this because it can be a transformational experience if we can get some Black and brown entrepreneurs to see software and technology as a viable. I mean, TechStars is one of those things. If you just have an idea, and you're low traction and starting out, like that's a perfect place to start. So I'm going to be cruising around these high schools and seeing any smart kids in computer science STEM clubs. I'm like, yo, y'all need to apply for this. Because it would be transformational for those students, or for young people in college or young professionals who are working on something in STEM to do something like that. So shout out there to the Health Science Center.
Awesome. Well, let's move into this upcoming election. If it seems like we're always voting, it's because we are, and that's a good thing. We get to participate in the democratic process, and we have another election coming up on November 2nd. So if you are in Tarrant County, Fort Worth ISD, all of these will apply to you. If you're in Tarrant County, fall outside of Fort Worth ISD, everything except for the last school board bonds will. But first, there are 8 constitutional amendments that are going up for vote this year. And we're just going to run through them all and kind of explain what they are, because you see them on your ballot. They're like confusing wording, or like, what is this? What does this mean? You just vote yes because you don't really know what it means, and if it's on there, it's bound to be good. But we want to take a more educated approach to the ballot box, and hope you'll share this segment with people before they go to vote. Early voting was running last week. It's going to be running for a few days this week, and then November 2nd is Election Day. Make sure you go to Tarrant County Elections online to find a place to go vote, as it's a little bit more limited than what we had during like the mayoral or presidential elections. So, Texas Proposition 1 is authorizing charitable raffles at rodeo venues amendment. And you're reading this, you're like, why the hell are we voting on this? And that's a good question. There's a number of these things where it's like, why do we have an election for this? And that's just based on how the Texas Constitution is written. A yes vote supports amending the state constitution to authorize professional sports teams, charitable foundations to conduct raffles at rodeo venues and include professional association-sanctioned rodeos in the definition of professional sports team. Basically, like, Texas and most of the U.S. has been anti-sports gambling for a long time for a lot of dumb reasons. I am pro-sports gambling, and I hope that this is a path to Texas legalizing it. But basically all this is taking an amendment from a few years ago and clarifying it so that rodeos also qualify to hold like 50-50 raffles and stuff like that. So if you go to AT&T Stadium and you see a 50-50 raffle, anything like that going on, that's fine to happen there, but professional rodeo was not designated as a professional sports event, so it couldn't happen at like Dickies Arena during a rodeo. There's just clarifying that. It seems silly and simple, but that is what it is. Prop 2, to authorize counties to issue infrastructure bonds in blighted areas amendment. This is one that when I was reading it on the ballot, I was super confused, but there are some important distinctions in here. A yes vote supports amending the state constitution to authorize counties to issue bonds to fund transportation and infrastructure projects in blighted areas. It prohibits counties from allocating more than 65% of property tax revenue increases annually to repay the bonds. And it prohibits counties from using the funds from the issuance of the bonds to build a toll road. Currently, the state constitution authorizes incorporated cities and towns to issue bonds for infrastructure and transportation projects in blighted areas. So that stays the same. What this does do is limit the amount of property tax revenue increases dedicated to repaying the bonds, which personally I see as a positive thing, and it prohibits counties from using the funds to build toll roads, which I think is a very positive thing. Like, we got way too many toll roads in North Texas. Mm-hmm. So that's what Prop 2, if you're voting yes, that's what you're voting for. If you're voting no, then the changes, there wouldn't be the 65% limitation and the prohibition from toll roads. Prop 3. Okay, so there are a couple of these props that I think were created in relation to COVID and limitations on certain things. This one is a prohibition on limiting religious services or organizations. A yes vote supports amending the state constitution to prohibit the state or any political subdivision from enacting a law, rule, order, or proclamation that limits religious services or organizations. A no vote opposes amending the state constitution to do the same thing. Currently, there are articles of the Constitution, obviously, that govern the relationship of church and state. That's a basic thing you learn in high school government. What I believe this is trying to do is say that in a pandemic where a virus is spread via airborne transmission, such as COVID, they're trying to say that the government would have no authority to limit religious organizations from meeting. That's the unwound version of some really confusing text. But basically all this is saying is that if another pandemic ever comes about, which we're on like an every 100-year track, it seems like.
We got that Delta Plus now.
That if the governor issued an executive order trying to shut down religious services, that would not hold any weight. So fall on that, whatever side you will. I think that there is a positive to government being able to look out for the good of the entire community. So that's what Prop 3 is. A vote yes means that a church or religious organization can kind of do whatever they want regardless of the realm of public safety. Prop 4 changes the eligibility for certain judicial offices amendment. A yes vote supports making the following changes to eligibility requirements for a justice of the Supreme Court, judge of the Court of Criminal Appeals, justice of court appeals, and a district judge. It requires candidates to be residents of Texas as well as the U.S. That's how it is now, not a change. Requires 10 years of experience in Texas as a practicing lawyer or judge of a state or county court. Requires 8 years of experience in Texas as a practicing lawyer or judge of a state or county court. Disqualifies candidates if their license to practice law was revoked or suspended during experience requirement. And applies these requirements to individuals elected or appointed to a term beginning January 1st, 2025. I thought this one was actually interesting as I was going through it. Essentially, this amendment would add 10 years of experience to potential candidates for these positions. So currently, the state constitution requires that a justice or judge has been either a practicing lawyer or a lawyer and judge of a court of record together for at least 10 years. So this adds a second 10 years onto that. So it's kind of like gatekeeping that the old guard continue to stay in charge for judgeship in Texas. Seems kind of like a status quo protection, nervous about like who potential younger justices are going to be in the state. So that's what that is. It seems like a little bit of gatekeeping to me. Prop 5, State Commission on Judicial Conduct Authority over Candidates for Judicial Office Amendment. A yes vote supports adding a section to the state constitution that authorizes the State Commission on Judicial Conduct to investigate and discipline candidates seeking state judicial office in the same manner as judicial office holders. This is like a very confusingly worded, but essentially it's trying to say that the State Commission on Judicial Conduct can hold potential judges accountable in the same way that they hold current judges accountable. Currently, the Texas Constitution authorizes the commission to discipline sitting judges through a number of different things. Now it's trying to expand that to also being able to discipline judicial candidates. I don't really know what the impact of this is. I believe it would maybe help filter out people who aren't fit to be judges, but I also don't know the ethics of like being held accountable for something that for a position you're not in, you know?
Yeah.
It's like if EJ was trying to discipline me for doing a bad job as an SSA agent, even though I wasn't one and was just applying to be one. If that makes it, like, it feels weird, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make a ton of sense. Prop 6, this is another one that you're like, why are we voting on this? This probably affects like 10 people each year. It is the right to designate essential caregiver amendment. Oh, no, that's Prop 7 and 8. This one is another COVID-related one. It's essentially saying that anyone in a nursing home could designate one person who is allowed visitation rights regardless. Like there can be no restrictions placed on them being able to visit someone in a nursing home. And like, I get it. It's been tough. It's been tough. My grandma passed like a month and a half ago, and she was in a nursing home the last like 6 months of her life. There were tons of restrictions around people being able to go in and see her. Like, yeah, that sucks. Also, like, COVID put her in the hospital, so maybe we don't want a bunch of random people. Not a bunch, but we don't want random people being able to visit regardless of if it's healthy or not. So... Yeah,
you have two more before we hit the school board.
Yeah,
I would love to know the Jimmy endorsement. How Jimmy's voting 1 through 8 afterwards.
Yeah,
so like once you hit them all, so you got 2 more to do.
Yeah,
I'd love to know what you're gonna.
I'll do it. So number 7 and 8, I'll do together because they're essentially the same thing. It's a homestead tax limit for surviving spouses of disabled individuals, and a homestead tax exemption for surviving spouses of military fatally injured in the line of duty. Essentially, for the disabled one, if you have a disabled family member in your homestead, there is a limit put on your homestead tax that's paid to that's part of school district taxing. Currently, if that person passes away, so there is no longer a disabled person in your house, you no longer have that limited tax exemption. Obviously, that's something that your life has been framed around. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. This is extending that so that you get to keep that even if your disabled family member passes. And then number 8 expands the verbiage of military members killed in the line of duty. So same, like, kind of restriction on homestead tax exemption. Currently, the wording is for members of the armed services who are killed in action. The amended language would include service members who are killed or fatally injured during military training or other training duties. For example, due to its phrasing, the current exemption does not include members of the military who died during their service due to injuries sustained that are not combat-related. For example, members of the Air Force who are killed in a training exercise are not included in the current exemption, even though their death was a direct result of their duties in the military. So this is just casting a wider net for who falls under that category. So... for me, Prop 1, raffles at rodeos, I'm voting yes.
Yeehaw, there we go.
Prop 2, authorize counties to issue infrastructure bonds in blighted areas. That provides the limitation on toll roads and property tax increases. I'm yes. Prop 3, which is the limitation on religious services, I am no. I do want the state government and federal government to have authority to make public health decisions. And that's essentially what this is trying to limit. Prop 4, which is changes to eligibility for judicial offices, voting no. We shouldn't be gatekeeping based on, an extra 10 years trying to keep old guard in charge if they're not able to just hold their positions through elections, etc.
Makes sense.
Prop 5, which is the State Commission on Judicial Conduct having authority over candidates for office. Voting no, that just seems like an off. Why do you hold authority over somebody who doesn't work for you? Mm-hmm. Prop 6, right to designated essential caregiver. Voting no. Again, like I fully understand that it sucks, but especially like nursing homes should be able to put limitations on if people can visit, if it's of health issue to the rest of the people in there. And then Prop 7 and 8, yes, I think that's an easy thing to extend that probably helps a very limited number of people, but clearly helps some people.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with anything there?
No, thought that was good. I took notes, and what also going to do is we're going to have what Jimmy's reading off. We're going to have a link to that in the description, so you can see a ballot before you go in. So if you wanted to like actually look at this while what he was talking about, you can see it before you go in.
And Ballotopedia is a great resource for any election, getting information on how these amendments got there, who was behind them, if there was any financing pushing them along. So it's a really great resource that you should check out before any election, whether or not you listen to us read it off to you or not. So now we're going to move on to 2 special elections for Tarrant County. The first is an issuance of $400 million of general obligation bonds for road work in Tarrant County. This is something we've talked about a few times on the show. I personally am against this because there's nothing pointing towards public transportation. Like any city planner and like city planning textbooks will tell you that just building more roads and making bigger roads doesn't help solve for congestion. And we're just kind of in a cycle of like throwing more and more money at the problem. And so for me personally, a $400 million bond that doesn't have any direction towards public transportation is not a positive thing for the county. And like, I get that there are plenty of roads in Fort Worth that need work. Like, that's a very true thing. But if we're just talking about like expanding and adding on new lanes to areas that are getting more crowded, like I would urge the county to look for modern solutions to this and not just continue throwing money at commuter culture. Yeah, so Prop B is the issuance of $116 million of Tarrant County bonds for purchasing, constructing, improving, and equipping a criminal district attorney office.
Oh,
this was something that I think it was either a very early Fort Worth Report story, or maybe it was in the Star Telegram. I can't remember, but Fort Worth or Tarrant County is one of the largest places in the country without a criminal district attorney's office, which we found very interesting at the time. I haven't seen a ton of this in the news covered at all, but here's my thing with this is we just spent a ton of money to buy the old Pier 1 building. There's no way we filled up every floor with offices. Like, why do we need to purchase and build new land when we have office space that I guess is owned by the city, but still maybe this is like ignorant of me to think that the city and county could work together to find office space for them in there. Yeah. But it just kind of seems like, why are we not utilizing what we already have? So that was my take on it. And then last we have, so if you're listening to this podcast, most likely you live in Tarrant County. Those two will for sure be on your ballot.
And we got a no for that for
yes, that's where I'm sitting right now is no and no. Not because it's not necessarily needed, but because there are better alternatives.
Yeah.
And then last, if you're in Fort Worth ISD, you are going to have these 4 props on your ballot. And these I'm yes all the way to all 4 of these. So Prop A is $1.2 billion, with the majority of that going into middle schools as well as some elementary schools. So we're talking major renovations throughout Fort Worth ISD, new secured front entry vestibules, corridor upgrades of common areas, cafeterias, media centers, building additions for various campus needs, expanded remodeled media centers, refitted science labs, modified locker rooms and weight rooms, life cycle improvements. And it's based on the money that each school would get invested into it is based on need in the area as well as age of the school. And so basically it's trying to create a level playing field, especially in middle schools across Fort Worth, which, like, I think Fort Worth's got some really solid high schools. I think Fort Worth's got some really solid elementary schools. I feel like all I hear about Fort Worth middle schools is that they're not in good shape, which we see the one over here on Meadowbrook, and it looks like a dump.
Yeah.
So,
what's going to be really interesting is, I mean, the navigating school during all of this construction. Like as a teacher and a principal, like that is not fun. And so what's what I kind of think is like how much of these kids are going to be sacrificing their own school experience for the transition of this. Is one, like, it just shows you like the power of just like us together, like seeing the future. And I think like if we can get on the other side of this and build world-class middle schools that match our staff and talent, I think one, it gets more people to as we grow as a city to stay public.
Yeah, and to me, like, what a vote of confidence to have your school being invested in while you're there. Like, I remember when I was in late middle school, my school was 2nd through 12th grade, and my school was getting an entirely brand new building built for mostly the elementary school. And it was like, yeah, kind of like there were a ton of portables out there, and like that kind of sucks and is like a weird dynamic. But then this building gets done, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome.
Yeah.
And like people believe in what we're doing. And so I think that's a really cool thing that parents could say to their middle schoolers, like, hey, we believe in you enough that we're going to spend $1.2 billion to make sure that you can have a better education experience.
Yeah.
And that prop also includes the early childhood care centers that we talked about earlier. So that's included in Prop A. Prop B is $98 million, and it's focused on existing fine art facilities in the district. And so that would go to middle and high school upgrades, improving ADA accessibility, improving acoustics, expanded seating capacity, new audio-visual lighting systems, new stages, rigging and curtains, storage for props and costumes. Maybe this like affects more of a niche of people, but still like a very worthy thing to be investing in, especially for a city that wants to pride itself on public art and being a place that fosters the development of artists. What better way to start that than in middle and high school? Prop C is $104 million, and that has to do with sports stadiums in the district. So it would be the construction of 3 new stadium complexes consisting of 5,000 seat football stadiums and tracks with turf field, concession facilities, adjacent field house with a competition gym, locker rooms, and team rooms. So that dedicates about $35 million to each of those 3 stadiums. I mean, we had been talking about like Kerry Moon wanting to build his like whatever stadium, the
soccer complex,
the Star Soccer Complex. Like, let's invest that in Fort Worth ISD. Let's attract a professional soccer team in that way. So this is $105 million to invest that in Fort Worth ISD.
Kids want to play, in their area. More likely people can show up.
Yep.
Farrington Field is so congested over there, and this is super cool. Super, super cool.
Yeah, and something that Fort Worth hasn't done in a long time.
And what's crazy about this is just like how different Fort Worth is going to feel when this is all done.
Yeah.
Like the vision of this idea of just like more the stadiums, the arts, the middle schools. Like, how proud are you as a citizen of just like, man, Fort Worth met the moment in education.
Yeah, we're investing in our kids. We're investing in our future.
Yeah.
And then Prop D is $76 million for construction, renovation, and equipment of recreational facilities. This will include remodeling middle school gyms, improve middle school field sport facilities, replace the turf at 14 high school baseball and softball fields, upgrade Goldstein Stadium, including turf, add ADA upgrades at Wilkerson Grimes Activity Center, and replace the turf at 14 high school football practice fields. Again, like, when was the time that, like, Fort Worth had a high school athletics team that was, like, competitive on the state level? You know? Like, obviously, Aledo, Southlake, but, like, we're talking the suburbs. Like, you drive by Arlington Heights, and I think like 97 is what it has on the thing for baseball state champs. Like, this is a big deal to want to be investing this in the city. So all 4 of these, I'm a big yes on. And I'll just say no proponents, or people who are proposing no, are saying that we shouldn't invest because not enough people utilize Fort Worth ISD because of declining attendance. And, like, get out of here with that BS. Like, this is the age-old, we're creating a privatized version of a public thing. We, the people of privilege, are going to go use that privatized / for-profit version. And then we're going to say that the public version is broken and doesn't need to be funded. Like, get out of here with that garbage. These are slam dunks.
Yeah.
And like you have said, build the ISD that makes people want to go to it. Yeah. Like, I understand if you're of the privilege to not go to Fort Worth ISD. I totally get the current state why you would not. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't make it attractive for the people who are there, which we know are 85% black and brown.
Yeah. Yeah, my thing that obviously this is one bond, 1 year, like not like a big old, but for me, if we're going to build kids ready for the future, it would have been nice to see something around maker spaces, 3D printing, getting really future kind of careers that the kids can learn and touch. Would have been nice to see. That's probably one of my only things. I mean, I get the whole stadiums and grass and dance and all that, but you know how many kids make a living doing that? It's 0.3%. We have a lot of we need a lot of engineers. We need a lot of developers. We need a lot of designers and kids to understand those things. And so I'm all for it. I think hopefully the next thing we invest, though, is in maker spaces in all of our schools where our kids can learn how to do that. And I'm sure there's probably some pretty nice things already in some of our schools that are already there. But yeah, I just think that's a part I would have liked to see.
Yeah, which Prop A does include expanded remodeled media centers and refitted science labs and modified classrooms. Who knows what that means, though? Like, we haven't been able to get somebody from the school board on to talk about some more of the details
The good
of
old
these
Bunsen
things.
burner.
So yeah, so this could include something like that, but it's not something that's as explicitly stated as build three new stadiums.
Yeah, I think like how cool would it be if we really doubled down on like esports. Like you want to talk about sending kids to you want to send your kid to the private school, but you got an esports arena. And then you got a 3D printer center in there that private schools can't do those kind of things on. I mean, you could, but like you have to do a lot of donations, fundraisings, and things like that. Talking about building a place where kids would want to be is if you're on the front end of building esports arenas, you're on the front end of building 3D printer facilities. Like,
yeah, which Arlington does have an awesome esports arena, and I think the Esports Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and so it's like. It's already a North Texas thing. Like that is something that
and you're seeing colleges do this. I went to University of Delaware, and they have like an esports team, like already for the University of Delaware, and this setup is dope. Like I was like, this is crazy. I don't know. Those are just things that I think like this kind of gives me a little bit of like, oh, like today high school. Like I think of like tracks, and I think of theaters, but the auditorium stuff as someone who's always speaking in auditoriums, Fort Worth auditoriums need some love, coming out with a, old projector and mics and stuff like that. It's hard to engage and build good experiences for kids with outdated environments.
Yeah, for sure. So I know that was a lot of like, especially me talking to try and ingest, but I hope that that's all useful information for you to get to a ballot box by November 2nd and vote. These things affect us in a really practical way, even more so than national elections do. So local elections are super important, and we really hope that you will get out and vote and encourage your peers to get out and vote as well. If you do go vote, tag us on Instagram. We want to repost your photos. We want as many people as possible to see that it's voting time again in Fort Worth and Tarrant County, and that it is important for you to get to the polls. You ready to move to our wins and losses?
Yes, sir.
Hit me with your loss.
My loss, which is like, again, like I'm not here to like say I have a strong opinion about it fully, but it's that new construction in the Como area makes ways for 4 new police cameras, I guess, and code compliance installed 13 cameras in the historically black neighborhood. So there was just basically it's been a long discussion about should there be cameras in neighborhoods, and there was an agreement that we're just going to install 4. What I just was able to see as well in here, like there was conversations. This is a Star Telegram article, by the way, called "Police Cameras Help Reduce Crime, but here's why some black and brown people aren't fans." And I'm one of those probably black and brown people that aren't necessarily fans. It's like actually. Like the tough thing about it is like I actually think we're already getting always recorded, like in a way of like smartphones and like everything is connected. Like I just assume we're always being recorded. The Illuminati works that way, but they now told us about these 4 cameras. I just think what was crazy about it is that they say 70% of cameras are in majority minority neighborhoods, and so that means where I walk my dog. And so I just think like thinking of it equitably, if you're going to record neighborhoods, why not just record every neighborhood? I'm not saying like just record every neighborhood. Like, I'm just like, that just probably my loss about it.
Yeah, I totally get that. If you're like, let's make it equitable.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair conversation to have.
Yeah.
My loss, thank you, Jessica Priest, for continuing to reveal how big of a shit show the water district is.
I would argue Jessica Priest is the unsung hero of Fort Worth, Texas, and doing the hard things. Like, she came out with the other story, though, which we didn't really hit, the waste management one.
Yeah.
Like,
which that's another, like, we can mention that right now, too. We are trying to reward a contract extension to Waste Management to continue services for trash pickup in Fort Worth. it's not necessarily an uncommon thing for it to be like a 10 to 12 year extension. And it is not required that Fort Worth do like contract bidding for it. However, it's been made known to us that Fort Worth could be saving money on this. So taxpayers could be saving money on this. And that because of growth in Fort Worth, we're already running in the red for this service. And that potentially there would be cost increase for residents in the future because of this. So it is interesting that we're not taking bids on this, even though we know we could save money on it, and it's something that could cost taxpayers more in the future.
Inigo Sand, CEO of FCC Environmental Services, says it's not only very unusual, but it's also very unusual to make a 12-year extension. Why not 1 or 2 years? 12 years is even longer than the life of the trucks that are going to provide the service.
But they did follow that up saying that usually these contracts are 10 to whatever years because that's the life cycle of the truck. So you're trying to help the companies make up on their long-term investment. But they also said that it was unusual that only one company is covering a city of this size.
Yeah.
So something that we never really like thought about or really dove into before has always passed very easily. That is getting some light shown on it.
I do love my trash service, though, by the way. Like, I feel like I like mine. If I don't know if you...
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our trash is okay, but our recycling sucks. Like, I feel like I break down my boxes. I like cut up my boxes to make sure that the pieces are nice and loose and easy to fall out. And I swear, every week I come out and my recycling bin has only been half emptied. And so then it's like, now I'm playing catch up and have a bunch of extra recycling laying around the house because you didn't actually empty my can. Yeah, I've called them a few times and had them come out and empty it again. So I'm for, let's get some competition in here.
But yeah, you know, and this is just cool because I can think like, this wasn't even the story we're going to talk about this Jessica did, but you know, something just like waste management that just impacts our life. No bids, 12-year extension. Like, even if we don't care, like someone should be telling us about that.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jessica.
Yeah.
For telling us about that.
Exactly.
Just like this water story.
Yeah.
Water board
So
story.
Congresswoman Kay Granger's daughter-in-law is leaving the Tarrant Regional Water District. Her departure coincides with the board's efforts to address the community's complaints about nepotism at the agency. Their title is placemaking manager. They started working for the water district in 2004, and her last day will be on November 19th. She served on the Panther Island Central City Flood Project senior management team. Yeah, there's just a lot. I mean, this district has been a haven for nepotism, people getting paid money, good sums of money that on things that we really haven't like seen the outcomes of.
The CEO hired his girlfriend, the one that got kicked off.
Yeah, and now there is a grand jury that is going to be investigating our water district. And I'm guessing that doesn't happen, and even this doesn't happen, if not for the reporting of Jessica and the Fort Worth Report being as forthright with putting this out there as they have been. So it just shows you the power of local news, of people being informed, and of using your voice to be heard.
My take, like I said off pod when we were preparing, is we need to be auditing nepotism in every governmental organization, not just in the city of Fort Worth, but in the country. I think nepotism is a classic. I mean, you got Kate Granger getting federal funds. You got Kate, who works for the water. You got JD, who's making $242,000 annually.
Yeah.
And like, you know, doing Panther Island. I mean, this is just
Yeah. This is kind of coming off as a win in favor of local journalism,
Yeah.
but this is a loss
Investing in
that this is a
journalism.
massive, massive cluster.
yeah. Invest in journalism. By the way, I know Star Telegram's doing a campaign around donations, or if you don't have a subscription, get a subscription. Even though I know like they also did a survey, and they asked if you're disappointed or satisfied, and it is lukewarm right now. I feel like they need to do a better job in some places, but journalism is a hard place to be in. So I give credit that you're showing up every day.
Yeah. My win, and maybe this is like the last one was like a loss that felt more like a win. Maybe to some people it's a win that feels more like a loss. Is that the original Fred's Texas is closing its West 7th location on Curry Street. Okay, so here's my win around this. Any business that you enjoy patroning, leaving the Crockett Row area is a positive. Like, parking is miserable, especially if you're trying to patronize a business who does not like opt into whatever like parking garage agreement thing there is to get validated. It's just like a nightmare to get in and out of. Like, I haven't been to Fred's in probably 8 years. This Fred's in probably 8 years, because it's just like not worth trying to get to me. So yeah. I call this a win because I think any business getting out of Crockett Row that you want to support is a positive thing. And that like they were able to sell the location. They have a new location that is bigger, more expansive at 7101 Camp Bowie West, targeting a spring 2022 opening. I'm sure this was a super hard decision for them, but to me, this is a win because even if it's further away from me now, I would rather go to this Fred's than try and find one of the 5 parking spaces to go to that Fred's.
Yeah. I think the loss is that West 7th has became what it is. But I mean, some people enjoy it. So, but
yeah, it serves a demographic.
Yeah.
I'm not that demographic, and like I understand that. But if there are businesses trying to serve a different demographic than what's there, then they're in a tough spot. So I expect that this will be a long-term net win for them, even if it's sad and tough.
Yep. My win, which is something that I think is really cool, is this whole dive group stuff. There was a couple stories about how Fort Worth area is getting divers who are going into like Lake Como, and I believe maybe some other lakes as well. But they are like basically finding cars in the water, and it's working through a nonprofit that started in Oregon. I think the guy's name is Doug Bishop. And Jared Lisek created an Oregon-based Adventures with Purpose and started diving for cars. And they basically were just talking about how like cars and lakes are bad because of like leakage, oil, and all that kind of stuff. But then they found a second purpose, which is really crazy. And the Fort Worth Police Department has like been one of the most positive, friendly to this organization, saying like, hey, you want to find cars in our lakes? Bring it on. Because check out this statistic. Out of the 150 cars that Mr. Bishop, found, personally, 17 of them have contained human remains. That means 11% of the cars in lakes have people in them. Like, you want to talk about solving some crimes? You want to talk about missing some people? I just feel like this is a no-brainer. How do you scale this, Oregon? Like, let's get into every lake and take out cars, because it's already, one, it's good for the environment, but two, it's good to like for evidence and finding things. And so I just think it's such a clever, passionate thing. I know there was a story about how there's it inspired 2 local guys whose sister went missing, and they're like, hey, we probably won't find our sister, but like if it just doing this, just the idea of finding somebody or the idea of providing some type of evidence is good. So I just think that's just like cool way to be innovative and clever, and just like it's a mixture of good, but it's also service, helping government officials. Like, they don't have to do the work, but like Fort Worth Police, like, hey, we'll help with the research, we'll help with whatever we connect with, and do the link afterwards. Just seems like a great win-win.
So we finished season 1 of Succession last night. Which I guess I'll say spoiler alert, but when something's been out for 4 years, I don't think that like you really have to say that anymore. But it ends with a car in a lake and a dead person inside. So this bringing this up today really we're on like a trend now. But I agree with you. Like that's crazy. I would, if you had asked me to guess, I would have said like, yeah, maybe like 1 or 2 had something inside. But like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And like, police departments don't have a very good success rate at solving most crimes, nevertheless murders. So like, I agree with you. Like, let's get to the bottom of every lake. This is like,
it's truly getting to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
You know, it's like getting to the lake.
This is like
in.
if you got to like swim around in It's a Small World and scoop up all the money that's at the bottom for like a day and walk away with it.
Yeah.
Except for in like a negative way. But that's all we've got for you today. We hope you have a good week. This coming Saturday, the Big Yellow Duck's going to be out at Trinity Park. Next Sunday is Halloween. Stay safe. Have fun. Are you dressing up as anything?
Oh yeah, I actually somehow got invited. Like my wife's friend somehow made us go to some rave in Dallas, and now me and my wife are going to be Lilo and Stitch. So
Nice.
I'm Stitch, but yeah. So there it is.
Nice.
What about for you guys?
I think that we're going to be like a picnic. So like we're wearing like plaid shirts with like ants on them and food and stuff.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll see how long our 16-month-old wants to trick or treat for. She does enjoy strangers giving her things, but I don't know if we want her to have that much candy. So we'll see if we make it past like 2 or 3 houses.
Love it. Well, see you guys next Monday, or throughout the week if you listen to this throughout the week. If you haven't got the chance to interview last week, was a super niche episode around like the entrepreneurial scene. Really good stuff, as that's going to come up with Global Entrepreneurship Week, November 7th through 13th with events. Check out gewfortworth.org and you can learn more about that, which is a good, like, it's so cool that we interviewed Health Science Center entrepreneurship ecosystem people, and then stories come out of how the accelerator, that we're the largest city without an accelerator, actually happens. Pretty cool stuff. And so it's just cool that 817 is kind of in the loop of that kind of stuff, because have you seen a lot of stories talked about it? That white paper has been out, that data has been out for a while, and there hasn't been a lot of discussion. So kudos to them.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Dopamine swipe. Follow us like double tap. Now they control your life.